So what we're going to do today, and I think it's a good subject, is we're going to do maintenance. And some of it I've done before in bits and dribs and drabs. So we'll put the whole lot under one section and do it tonight. Now, the big thing here is if you don't have a Triumph automatic tension machine, it may be slightly different for you, but it won't be that different. But we have tubes and things, so the same as the new Bonina. And so some things will be slightly different. So I do advise if you don't have these machines, then check with your manual as well, because there might be more things on your machine that you can actually oil and stuff. But I will touch on that as we go along. So, look in your manual for maintenance. Okay, let's get going with the slideshow. So let's add that to the stream. Okay, maintenance. Oh, that's a shame about that E being on the next line down. I didn't notice. Maintenance on the Serger. I'm sure it wasn't. Okay, the first thing we're going to talk about is needles because it causes so much, people get so confused about this. So check on your machine, whatever machine you have, check what your recommended needle is. And that recommended needle is awesome because if you have any needle problems, you're going to put your needle that is recommended for your machine in, and it should work perfectly. It might work perfectly with other needles, but that is your go-to check needle, okay? As far as the Babylocks go, you're always going to use that recommended needle in the cover stitch needles. The 3 cover stitch needles need that recommended needle. Otherwise, you may have a stitch problem. But as far as the serger side goes, you can use any needle. You can use any needle at all. You can use top stitch needle, a microtex needle, um, and I do use all those other needles on the serger side. That's the O1 and O2 needle, not the chain needles. Now, I do want to talk about knits because that came up a lot this week. Knits, you should be using a ballpoint needle. Okay, so in the serger side of the machine, you can use a stretch needle, ballpoint needle, knit needle, stretch needle, whatever ballpoint needle there is if you're using knits. Now, on the cover and chain side, I've told you you can only use the designated needle, but you can use a designated needle, ELX 705CF in the case of the Babylocks, with a ballpoint. So let me take you on to the next slide. And you should do that for your knits. So most of the Babylocks take ELX 705. Okay, and I've told you you can use any stretch needle. But for some reason, my slide's not fitting the whole screen. But let me tell you this. There is a special needle for knits called ELX705, and it has written after it SUK, and that denotes it as a ballpoint needle. And it comes in several sizes. It comes in a 90 and an 80, which is just about all you'll need. And I recommend you use that when you're using the chain needles, okay, if you're working on knits. So that is my conversation on needles. And the only other thing to say is needles aren't that expensive. Change your needles regularly. I probably change my needles every time I start a project. Okay, it's just the best way to go. Bad needles will give you bad stitches, and it's actually very easy to bend a needle and not notice it's bent. So new needles will solve that problem. So let's go back to the show. Oil. And now this is the one that throws everybody. Check your manual for oiling. Every machine is different. If you have a Babylock automatic tension machine, it will tell you to take it to your dealer for servicing regularly, and it probably won't mention oil. Okay, so let me just show you. I have a, what do I have? I have a Vibrant. Okay, that's another Babylock Serger, and it has a maintenance page. And you go to the maintenance page and it tells you what you can oil. Now you can oil a lot more on the Vibrant than you can on the Triumph. In fact, you're not supposed to oil anything on the automatic machines, but I will show you one area that you can oil if you feel you need to. Okay, so I'm going to put you onto the machine and I hope I'm going to make it big. So let's make it big. And I'm going to point to it. So just let me find something to point with. I've got a screwdriver that will do the job. Right at the back here, you will find the upper looper post, and it's a rod inside a circular metal section, and you can oil around that point if you want to. Let me get some more light on it because I don't know how well you're seeing it. So what I'm pointing to, let's get a bit nearer. And this is the only place you can put oil on these machines. And it's just there at the back, the rod into the circular bit. It's right at the back there. Now, if you have another machine, it might tell you in your maintenance to oil that section. And I just use a regular sewing machine oil. Okay, this is the one I have here, but I have lots. And I'm just going to put a little drop on the bottom of that post where it goes into the circular thing. Okay, I don't need to do much because I've just had mine serviced. So that is the only place you can oil. So let's go back to the slideshow and we'll see what else we have to say about it. However, there are other things you can do to keep it running smoothly. Clean out the lint and use a brush or a mini vacuum. So I have a mini vacuum, and it's one that charges, and it hasn't got it's not really powerful, but it does do the job. And I just hoover all the lint out with that. Okay, I just hoover around wherever I can reach. I open the door, and I'll show you that in a minute. Open the door, and I just hoover out all my bits of dust, but I find it doesn't get everything. Canned air. There are two subjects I never bring up. One is canned air, and the other is whether you should wash your fabrics before you sew it. Everyone has such strong opinions on both that I just ignore the two things. I don't go there. Right, let me just move you onto my machine and I'll just show you. So here's where I vacuum, all inside here and round the side here with both my doors open. Okay, but it doesn't get all the lint out. So what I tend to do is use a paintbrush, a small paintbrush helps me. And I also use Q-tips. And sometimes I'll put a little dab of oil on the end of the Q-tip and I just put it in there and wipe away. And it always amazes me how much more fluff comes out on a Q-tip than came out after I'd vacuumed. So I strongly recommend doing that. It really does pick up all the dust in the areas that you can see, but we can't see everywhere. So where you can reach, you can certainly use a Q-tip. Right, I'm going to stop for a minute and just check for questions. So let's have a look. Eva says she's never found a vacuum with a nozzle shaped like that. The brand. I don't know the brand. I bought it on Amazon. It's Brigii. Okay. I wouldn't say it's brilliant, but it does the job. Brush, yes, all those things work. All those brushes work. There's no doubt about it. But let's just go on because you have to take your stitch plate off to get to the bit that you really need to clean. So let's just keep going with the slideshow for the minute. And let's just talk about blockages in tubes because they happen, okay? Sometimes you'll go to thread the machine and the thread won't go through. And that could be because you have your subsidiary looper still connected. That's one of the first reasons why the thread doesn't go through. And the other one is that you might have a small blockage. So let me just show you on the machine how to sort that out. Right, so here is my machine, and in my drawer, I have my wire. Now, if you have any of the baby locks with tubes, on the banana, you didn't get a wire, but they suggest you put thread down and clean your tubes that way. But I have a wire here. I'm just getting it out the bag. So bear with me. I have, because the thing I want to tell you is that my wire, it comes in a very small bag, so it's very easy to miss. And just know how important it is, because if you get stuck, it's going to help you no end. So don't lose it. I lost one. Right, let me just cut something here. Right, I tie a bit of silk ribbon to the end of mine. And the reason for that is this is the looped end and this is the regular end. And the reason for that is if I've got something in there, it helps to pull it out. So it's just a small piece of silk ribbon. So you get a blockage. Well, it's sometimes you know where the blockage is. Say it's in this section, then I would just, I've got my tubes open and I would just leave them open and I would put my piece of wire, I'm unblocking the upper looper, and I'm going to see the wire come out the tube. And if I know it's in this end, I'm not going to close my tubes and push it all the way through because then I'll just push my blocked material there. And now I can see my tube there. And what I would do is grab a pair of tweezers or forceps and I would just pull it through. And if I've got a blockage, it will pull it through. Okay, my silk ribbon just came off, but luckily it didn't come off in the machine, so that was good. Okay, so what if it was this end? What if my blockage was between where the thread comes out and the tube here? Then I would put my wire in the end where the thread comes out here, and I would push it through because that's the smallest section. So I would just push it through here. I've got my tubes open and my wire will come out down the bottom. I've got a kink in my wire. I'm using forceps to push it through. Whoops. And there you are. You'll see it will come out here. Or if you don't know where it is, you're going to close your tubes and you can push your wire all the way through. Or try. This will work. I don't know why I'm having a problem with it, except to say that it's an old piece of wire. There it is. You can just see it sticking through and you're going to grab it and just pull it through. Okay, and it will pull out any blockage you've got in there. So I'm going to wrap it up because I don't want to lose it and put it back in the bag. Yeah, I've got another wire. I've just got to find it. It's in my drawer, but I think perhaps this one is a bit old, but it came through in the end. So that is one way to unblock your tubes. Otherwise, it's a question of taking it to your dealer. Right, let's have a look at the next one. So yeah, I do tie a piece of silk ribbon on the end of mine, although I think I've just lost it. Although here it is, so we'll see. Do not use your built-in needle threader for threading. And the reason for that is it's really not designed to work with threading heavy thread. It will thread regular thread without any problem. But if you use a decorative thread in there, you are at risk of damaging your thread. And I'm not talking about those threaders that you buy, the little stick one and things like that. I'm talking about the built-in air threaders for the needles. Don't use heavy decorative thread to thread them. Right, let's all look at how to remove the stitch finger, because this is where I think people have the most problems. So let me just remove that and go here. Right, so here is my stitch plate. The first thing I'm going to do is remove the foot. It's not a bad idea to remove the needles just purely because they get in the way. Okay, and the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to put my knife down. And this is the really important part. I'm going to turn my stitch length dial to the R numbers, okay? And what happens when you put your stitch length dial on R numbers, it removes the stitch finger. And that is really important. And if you have any other machine, just check in your manual that whether you have to move the stitch finger. You do for the Vibrant, you do not for the L890, but check in your manual. I don't want you to get confused or misunderstand me, but check whether you need to. Only if you don't move it, you're at risk of damaging it. So let me just open my tubes and move my upper looper down. And the first thing I'm going to do is find a Phillips screwdriver. You probably got one. And remove this screw here, okay? I'm hopeless with a screwdriver. Right, and I do not want to lose my screw. So I'm going to put it over here. So I've told you where I've put it. Right, this back one actually undoes with your Allen key. I just happen to have a longer one here, but it's the red Allen key. And just loosen it enough that you can lift the screw up. And there you are. I can lift my plate and move it. Okay. And what you need to do now is you need to have a real good look at my machine has been cleaned recently. It's just come back from the shop and you can see how much rubbish I've got in there. And I've only sewn, well, I've sewn a few things, but not that much. So I'm going to use my Hoover to hoover that out, or my vacuum. Of course, I call it a Hoover. And you can use a brush as well, but I'm just using a Hoover. And it's where these feed dogs are that gets really dirty. And if you have too much fabric build up in there, the plate won't go on properly. Right, so I've cleaned it all. I might get my little Q-tip out just to get anything that's left that the Hoover didn't pick up. Just have a little clean round. As I say, mine's pretty clean because it's just come back from being serviced. Right, so how to put the plate back on. You're going to place the plate on there. Don't forget you're still on the R numbers. That's really important. And it kind of fits on. But if you don't get it exactly right, when you go to sew, there's a safety switch built in that won't let you sew. But if you have just removed your stitch plate, then just reposition it. If it's just slightly off, it may stop the sensor from working. Right, so this one goes at the back. Screw it in. And that's how to move the stitch finger. Don't forget, you've got it on the R numbers. I've moved it back to regular numbers and my stitch fingers come up. So I'm going to have a quick look at questions. Yeah, Eileen said she had that problem with the tubes, that she had a blockage near the needle end and went from the other end. It's you can go either way. Forceps might help you just to get the right angle on the wire. Somebody's never taken their stitch plate off. Oh, you that's exciting. Goodness knows what you'll find. But yeah, important to take it off and give it a good clean. Now that's something you can do, okay? Because as we've said, so much of the maintenance on these is dependent on the dealer. So as I said, Q-tips really help. Let's talk about the knife, okay? Because that's something that comes up a lot. People think that they need a new knife. You will know if you need a new knife because what you get is you get this banging. It kind of like tapping that happens. It goes tap, 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 tap. Okay, so that will tell you that you need a new knife. I've never, the only time I think you really, really are going to notice it is if you go over a pin or something like that. Then you may well need a new knife. On this machine, which is probably about 5 years old, I've had one new knife. Okay, so they last a long time. Lastly, if you are having a problem with your serger, take it to your dealer. You know, it's definitely the best place for it to be. Now, I was having a problem with my machine. It was actually more of a tension problem. I was getting tunneling between the stitch and the knife, and it'd been going on for a while. And so, anyway, I took it to my local dealer and they kindly serviced it. My machine's working better than it's ever worked. I've really got a nice stitch and nice tension. I just wish I'd taken it in earlier rather than struggle with it. But it depends on how much you use it as to how much you need to take it in. I always kind of chuckle when people come to class and they say to me, I haven't used my serger for 3 years, and then it doesn't work very well. You know, if you don't use your serger for a long period of time, you're going to need to take it in. And the reason they have to deal with it is when you take all the casing off this machine, you find all the bits they need to oil and grease. We can't do that. We can't take the casing off. You don't want to take the casing off. Yeah, Joyce says that she takes her machine in every year to have it serviced. And, I think that's a good move. I think they're expensive machines. I mean, they're reliable machines. I don't think you should expect to have a problem, but you're certainly looking after your machine if you have it serviced regularly. Who is your local dealer? Mine has never been in for a service. My local dealer is Flash and Sew Quilt. They've just opened a new store in Sarasota, so I'm excited about that. And that's where I had my machine serviced. How often should you vacuum? I have done two of your classes and two of Mrs. Serger classes and have not vacuumed yet. I pretty much vacuum every other day, and I'm not a neat freak, okay? It's just that I don't like it covered in dust. I I cleaned and oiled my banana today too. So yeah, you just taking the stitch plate off is the important part, really, so you can really get access to it. And I know a lot of you don't do it. And the biggie is make sure you have it on the R numbers or you remove the stitch finger in whatever way your machine requires um, before you put the needle plate back on, because it will damage your stitch finger if you try to force it on. Okay. So yes, my closest dealer is 300 miles away. Oh, that's bad luck. I'm glad I have one nearer. It's a long, long way, long way. So yes, any questions on cleaning? But most of all, just don't worry about the not oiling. I've showed you the one spot you can oil, which is pretty much the same with most machines. There's a few that have a few other oil spots that they can reach, but we don't with these big tubed machines, and they work very well. I very rarely have a problem with it. Oh, as far as the new needles, I probably put new needles in every time I sew. Um, yeah, it's as I say, needles aren't expensive, and it's just good to replace them regularly. A bent needle can do harm. So yes, I think that's just about all on maintenance. It's not a huge subject, but it is an important one, and I think a clean machine is going to give you less problems than a not clean machine. How do you dispose of your needles? I have a tin, and in that tin goes my rotary cutters and my needles. Okay. How come you said not to tie a thread on when you're changing color? Sorry, I forgot I said that. Yeah, don't do that because you're at risk of getting that knot stuck in your tubes. And these machines are so easy to thread. You really don't need to do that. So you're better off just threading it without having knots in there. Right. Well, I think that's all this week. I have got a list of events on my page. I have finished the teachable class for the hobo bag, and this is like my creative tote. It's a bag with lots of different techniques that you sew in sections, and then you join them all together to make this bag. So that is actually up on my teachable, and I think that's about it. I will be here next Monday, and I think next Monday I'm going to be talking about ruffles. Okay. Right. Well, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Get some sewing done, some serging done, post up pictures of what you do, and I will be back to see you next Monday. And thank you very much for coming in and joining me today. Good night.